put your silent reading book away. Your desk should be clear. Put your silent reading book away. Each desk should be clear. Let's go, Samantha. Julian, did you write everything down? Everything should be put away once you've written in your agenda book and put your math homework in your homework folder. Shouldn't take this long, guys. That's not enough. Yeah. Where's your math book? This class teacher is going to be really upset to see that this is what your math is. Alright, who remembers like maybe, probably about a month ago at this point, I gave you guys, I called it like a pre-test, and I asked you about some stuff about social studies. Does anyone remember? What did I ask you about? Does anyone remember? It was a long time ago. And then some people came in during lunch with me and they wrote on a poster. Jonathan B. What were the questions I asked you about?
I can't hear you.
You said that we talk about the government.
What about the government? What did I ask you about? I asked you about why we had something. Elia?
Why we have rules.
Why we have rules and laws. So that's what we're going to talk about today, since we've already started talking about our government. So really quick, I want you to turn to a partner. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Refresh your memories. Why do we have rules and laws? And then we're going to share, so have some good ideas. With your group or partner, doesn't matter.
You 4, you 3. Talk. Why do we have rules and laws?
But that means everybody needs to have rules
And the families.
So you have to be safe.
There's no rules for you. What did Ellie say?
So many bad things were happening today. Guns, like they'd be stealing everything. Everybody would be so
Very safe.
And so many bad things were happening. But with rules, we can keep that from happening.
Okay, someone else can talk too, Robert.
Emily, did you have a chance to talk? All right, let's listen to Emily, Robert. To be safe? That's good. Alright, ask who makes our rules and laws? You guys know how? Do they just come up with a law by themselves and then they pass it? Alright, table 4. Can one person tell me what you guys talked about? Rhoda, what'd your table talk about? Wait, did you guys split into 2 groups or were you one big group?
We were.
Rhoda, were you with these people? Tamia and Jonathan? Okay, what'd you and Tamia talk about?
We talked about if they, like, for example, the stop sign, if they don't have, like, those kinds, people can die.
So do they keep us safe? Rules and laws keep us safe? Is that fair to say? Okay. Mujahid, what did you guys say?
You won't know what to do.
What do you mean?
Like, if there's no rules in school, you don't know what to do or what to follow.
So if there are no rules in our school and you're allowed to do whatever you want, how would you ever know what to do? That's good. I like that one. Table 3, what about you guys? What did you talk about?
We talked about the world be chaotic.
The world would be chaotic if we didn't have rules?
And then we said that if you're like texting or driving at the same time, that can see the road and then crash.
That's true. Table 2, what do you guys talk about?
We talk about that if
I'll come back to you guys.
somebody did something bad and if robbing, you wouldn't be, the person wouldn't go to jail, and the person would still be robbing a lot of stores and things.
Did everybody hear that? So if we didn't have laws, so if it wasn't against the law to rob a bank, then anybody could do it and you would never get in trouble for it. You could just get away with it, and the people who are bad people, like criminals and people who do bad things, would never get punished because they didn't break any laws, because there are none. That's good. All right, the second half of Team 3. Elia, would you
We need
guys?
cops, because without cops, people can also rob, and they can do bad things like harm other people.
What do the police do? Why do we have police? What do they do with the law? What do they do? Jerry? What do the police do about the law? So we're talking about the law. How do the police, how are they involved in that? What do they do?
So, you should, if they they don't do that are illegal.
Yeah, they're enforcing the law. That's called enforcing. They're making sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and if they're not doing it, then you're going to get in trouble by them. All right, Team 1, what did you guys talk about? Robert, you want to share?
If we didn't have laws and rules, people would be told what they loved and what, like carrying guns and knives, hurting other people,
Yeah.
and we would be doing whatever we want, like if we want to, fighting and all that stuff.
Good. Does anyone know, we're talking about the government. You guys have already learned so much about the government. I was really impressed with you this morning. But when we're talking about the government and laws, how does the government make laws? Does anyone know? How do we get these laws that we have today? Allison?
The government figures out what laws they want, and
Who in the government? You guys can just make predictions. I don't think we've learned this yet. The government does, but we want to, who in the government makes these laws? Tammy, what do you think?
The government,
So you think maybe the president makes the laws? Maybe. Jonathan B., what do you think?
the Congress picks the laws, and then the president signs them to make them official.
Maybe. Julian, did you have a prediction? He stole yours? Who else thinks that the Congress makes the law and the president maybe signs them? All right, we'll see. I came up with I didn't come up, I found a video that we're going to watch, and it kind of talks about some of the stuff that we already learned about, so that's okay, but some of it is new stuff too. So I want you guys to be paying close attention because we're going to fill out a little brochure that I made for you guys afterwards. So I want you to listen very closely because all of the words that we need to fill out our brochure are in the video. So we need to be able to hear it. One second.
Jonathan Z, can you get the lights?
Oh, yes, please, thank you. And I'm also going to put the captions on too. It's going to say all of the words because there's a lot of new vocabulary that I want you guys to be able to see too.
It's got to be right around here. Oh. Dear Tim and Moby,
Can
can
everybody
you tell
hear?
me about the 3 branches of the U.S. government and what they do? From Marin. Hey, lucky for you, we're in Washington, D.C. When the Constitution was drafted, the framers divided the federal government's powers between the legislative, judicial, and executive branches. The Capitol building is home to the legislative branch of government. That's Congress. The United States Congress has the job of creating laws. Congress is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Both are made up of people from every state. Well, there are a total of 435 seats in the House of Representatives, but the number of representatives sent to the House varies in size from state to state. Each state sends a certain number of representatives, depending on the size of that state's population. The Senate always has 2 representatives per state. Right now, that's 100. Voters elect 2 senators from each state, regardless of population size. Well, the Senate and the House work together, but they have different powers. Both the House and the Senate can introduce bills that can become laws. But only the House can introduce bills that have to do with government spending, and only the Senate can approve or reject treaties with other countries and presidential nominations for government offices. The legislative branch, with its many representatives, helps build our laws in a way that serves every corner of our nation. The executive branch includes the president, the vice president, and the heads of various departments and agencies in our government. The executive branch carries out laws and approves and recommends new ones, and directs national defense and foreign policy. In addition, the President is Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. The President operates with the help of various special advisors called cabinet members. They advise the President on policy issues relating to foreign affairs, defense, agriculture, labor, education, and many others. The office of the President has grown very powerful since George Washington first held it. Today, the President is one of the most influential people in the nation, and maybe the world. Still, the President only gets at most 2 4-year terms, and then they gotta give somebody else a shot. Finally, the judicial branch is headed by the Supreme Court and its 9 justices. The Supreme Court's chief responsibility is to review and rule on court cases that may conflict with the U.S. Constitution. They look at these cases and decide whether or not the laws in question are unconstitutional. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the country, and their decisions overrule those of all other courts. The lower courts then use the Supreme Court's ruling as guidelines. By putting forth their rulings, the Supreme Court is actually interpreting the Constitution and helping shape the law of the land. Well, each of these branches of the U.S. government is held together by a complex system of checks and balances. The founders of the United States didn't want any one branch to have too much power, so each branch of government is limited by the other 2 in different ways. For example, Congress presents bills to the President, but the President can choose to sign it, making it a law, or say no and veto it. But Congress can override that veto if 2/3 of the representatives in both houses agree. However, if the Supreme Court decides that that law is unconstitutional, then that law is out of here. In addition to the checks and balances associated with laws, there are some others. The President's cabinet members have to be approved by a majority of Congress. Supreme Court justices serve for life, but they first have to be appointed by the President and approved by the Senate. Congress can also remove Supreme Court justices from their posts through a process called impeachment. The office of the President may be a powerful one, but the Supreme Court can declare the President's actions unconstitutional, and Congress can actually remove the President from office via impeachment. I think you get the idea. The checks and balances and separation of powers help keep our federal government in balance. Change happens slowly and deliberately, and only when a lot of people agree on it. Well, I don't think there's anything in the Constitution that says robots can't run for public office. Would I vote for you? I'm too young to vote.
Not the end. Can someone hit the like? Rhoda?
Congress?
No, what's Congress? Jason, what's Congress? Yeah, it's the legislative branch. They make the laws. But what's it called when, what's the word called that keeps any branch of government from having too much power? And it starts with a C and it's 3 words. No one heard checks and balances? No one heard that word? Oh, you were thinking of it? You just didn't share it? And how can the president get kicked out of office? What's that word called? Remember I said there's lots of new vocabulary, so I hope everyone was listening. Mujahid?
Impeachment?
Impeachment. So when you impeach someone, that means you kick them out. And one of our presidents was actually impeached. He was kicked out of office because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing. What is it called when the president can reject a law? They give it to him and he gets to decide if he wants to pass it or reject it. What's another word for reject? Kevin? Not answer? Not cancel. It starts, nope. And no one knows? Jose? Not execute. Jonathan B? Veto. Did everybody hear that word? Veto? That's one of the president's most important responsibilities. He alone can veto a law. That means if the Congress makes a law and they think it's really good and they pass it and they send it to him, he can decide if he doesn't think it's a good law and he can veto it, which means reject it, and then it doesn't become a law. Alright, so I passed out a brochure on your desk, and on the other side you can write your name on it, so flip it over and go ahead and write your name. And we're going to fold it when we're done, so don't worry about folding it yet. We're going to go ahead and fill it out. So once your name is on it, it says, I think at the bottom it says by with a blank, you can write your name there. And then once you have your name on it, you can flip it over so we can start writing. Write some yes. And then flip it over when you're done. Thank you, Jerson. Thank you, Jonathan.
Can I help you?
Sure. If you're moving quickly, though. If you get behind, don't keep writing for her. All right, let's go over it. So let's start with the legislative branch. What is another word for the legislative branch? What's it also called? No one knows what the legislative branch is also called? I see it somewhere in this room. Anthony? What is the legislative branch also called? What are those people called? They make up what? Jerry? Congress. Good. So these people are called Congress. Good. And they're also made up of two smaller groups of people. They're two houses. And the first house is called what, Jose? House of the Representatives. And what's the second house called? Rhoda? The Senate. Senate and House of Representatives. Good. And the Senate. And then it says the House of Representatives has blank people. And it's based on the population of each state. How many people are in the House of Representatives? Astrid?
435.
435. Good. And how many people are in the Senate? Allison?
100.
How many?
100.
100. Good. And how many people from every state? Aaliyah?
2.
Good. So the House of Representatives has 435 people. And that's based on how populated each state is. The more populated states have more representatives than the smaller states. And then the Senate has 100 people, and there's 2 people from every state. Good. Let's keep going. Their main job. Who can read to us what the legislative branch's main job is? Sheila, can you read it for us nice and loud?
Creating laws.
And go ahead and read the 2 bullet points. Nice and loud.
They can do so by creating bills that can be voted on to become laws. And they can build laws in a way to meet every need of our nation based on what people want.
So which branch makes the laws? Carter? Good. So Jonathan's initial prediction, and the one that a lot of you guys agreed with, was right. The legislative branch makes the laws. And they do that when people like us, can write to them. We can write them letters and we can say, hey, I really think this needs to become a law. People did that with texting and driving. You know how that's a law now? Some of you guys told me about that. You can't text and drive. People wrote to our legislators and said that they wanted it to become a law, and now it's a law in the state of Maryland. So the legislative branch can build laws in a way to meet every need of our nation. So when they think that there's something going on, there's something wrong, we can make a law to stop it from happening. And then our last one says, presents laws to the blank to be signed. So who does the legislative branch give the law to once they pass it? Kevin? The president. Good. So we present law, or the legislative branch presents laws to the president. To be signed. And the P in president should always be capitalized. And everyone should spell it right because it's written right up there. It's spelled right up there, so everyone should spell it right. Alright, let's move on to the executive branch. That's the one in the middle. Tammy, can you read to us what the first bullet point says? For under executive branch.
Made up of the president, the vice president, and the blank of the various department of
And agencies.
agencies in our government.
So the executive branch is made up of the president, his vice president, and the blanks of various departments and agencies in our government. Who thinks they know what goes there? Only table 2? All right, go Carter. Well, yeah, they're made up of his cabinet, and then each cabinet, they're a blank of a department. Does anyone know what that word is? The people in his cabinet are the blank of different departments. That means you're in charge. So the heads are the people who are in charge of different departments and agencies. So we have like a Department of Education, and that person, he makes a lot of the rules that our schools follow, and they make different curriculums and things like that. So heads. Thanks, Ellie and Elliot. And then what is the main job of the executive branch? Emily, can you read that second bullet point to us? It says main job. Can everyone hear Emily?
No.
Main job.
Approves. Recommends. Good. So the president or the executive branch's main job is to blank laws, and he approves and recommends new ones. Does anyone know? Anyone have any guesses? It said it in the video. Table 2 again. Rhoda? Well, he vetoes, but that's not his main job. His main job is to carry out laws. So we can write carrying out laws, and he approves and recommends new ones. So when the Congress sends him a law, he votes to either pass it or not pass it, and he carries it out. He makes it become real. And he can also approve laws, which we just said he votes on, or he decides whether or not he wants them to become a law or not. And he can recommend new ones. So he can talk to the legislative branch and say, hey, I really think this should become a law. I'm presenting this to you. What is another big responsibility of our president? It's the very next bullet point. He's the what? Astrid?
President is Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces.
Good. So he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. That means he's in charge of our whole military. He's the boss. He's the head of our military. Another big responsibility of the president is that he decides whether laws should be passed or, Bianca? Vetoed. And everyone should remember that veto means what?
Rejected.
Good. So he decides whether laws should be passed or vetoed. kind of spelled interesting, so everyone make sure you copy it down correct. What? No, it's an E. Sorry. V-E-T-O-E-D. Julian, what are some other responsibilities of the president? Can you read it to us?
The nation
Louder.
Directs.
directs nation defense
He directs the national defense.
and foreign
Policy.
policy deals with international powers acting as chief law enforcement officer.
Good. So some other important responsibilities of our president is that he directs the national defense, which is the military. He directs them. He makes sure they're looking out for us. And foreign policy. Who knows what foreign policy is? What might that mean? What does foreign mean? What does foreign mean? Jonathan? Yeah. People from other countries, they're foreign, they're not from the United States. So other countries. So foreign policy, what do you guys think that might mean? We already know it has to do with other countries, people from other countries. Jason? Not the police. He works with, oh, Allison? Foreign policy. What does it mean? So yeah, kind of. So he works with the other presidents or the prime ministers or the kings, the emperors from other countries. He works with them to make laws for the whole world. So sometimes we'll have laws with other countries and things we want to enforce to keep people safe. He's in charge of that. He deals with international powers, which is kind of the same thing. He deals with international other countries. He works with those people. And he acts as the chief law enforcement officer. So he's in charge. He's in charge of all of the people, all of the government, the military, everything. Jonathan? Did everyone hear that? That's a good, interesting fact. The president can work with other countries sometimes we're thinking about going to war with other countries, like we're in a war now. The president is the one who decides that. He decides if we're going to go to war or not, or he decides if we're going to try and talk to them and stay out of war. We are in a war. Who knows where? Well, we're not so much in an active war, but we were in a war for a long time, and we're kind of starting to leave this place. Where were we in a war? Does anyone know? Jonathan Z? Afghanistan, Iraq, it's kind of, we just call it the Middle East. We were in a war with the Middle East. Who knows why we were in a war with the Middle East? What happened? We talked about it in September. What's a really important event that happened in September? Not this past September, but a September maybe 12 years ago. Jonathan Z? 9/11, yeah. The events from 9/11 kind of are what kind of spiraled us to being in a war. Let's move on to the judicial branch. Heather, can you read the first bullet point for judicial branch, please?
The Supreme Court handling justice.
Justices. Good. How many justices are in the Supreme Court? Jarrison?
9.
Good. There's 9 justices in the Supreme Court, and everyone should know that because it's on your notes in the back of the room. The Constitution says, and the Supreme Court steps in on this. The Supreme Court also decides whether or not the laws in question, so different laws, are unconstitutional. What does unconstitutional mean? Carter, what do you think unconstitutional means? Allison?
Outside the Constitution.
It goes against what our Constitution says. And our Constitution is kind of like our basic laws. If it's unconstitutional, that means it goes against some of the laws we already have. And then the lower courts use the Supreme Court's ruling as guidelines. The judicial branch helps to blank. And this we're going to put shapes the law of the land, because they're kind of in charge of enforcing these laws. Shapes the law. The legislative branch.
Now I have to decide if I'm going to pass it or not. If I wanted to, I could veto it or reject the law. I do think it's really important that we have to protect a law that protects people from texting and driving. It could help our roads safer. I'm going to pass this law.
Our law is now enforced. People are expected to follow this law. However, unfortunately, not all people follow this law. Look what happens when our criminal, Jerry Chen, breaks the law. All right, go, judicial branch. Who's...
Since the legislature created and passed a law that banned texting and driving in order to protect people from being hurt in accidents, and the president passed it is up to us to make sure that the law is
constitutional.
Well, since the law doesn't interfere with any of our personal freedoms or rights as an American citizen, this law seems pretty constitutional to me.
So that means Mr. Chen is going to be held accountable for breaking the law when he was caught texting and driving?
Yeah, he's going to have to go to court so that the judge can try his case.
That's what happens when you don't follow the laws that our government makes for us to protect us.
You have to pay the consequences.
Good.
I sure am glad that all of our government works together to create and implement these laws, though. We work hard to create laws and rules that will keep our people safe.
Good. What did you guys learn from this activity? How are they made? How does our government work together to make these laws? Jose?
First,
The what? Constituents?
Yeah.
Does everyone know what constituents are? Constituents are the people. They're the people of the United States, so they're us. We're the constituents.
Yeah, so we write a letter to the legislative branch who sends it to the Senate.
What do they have to do before they can send it to the Senate? What do? They what? They vote. They send it to the Senate. What does the Senate do? Jonathan Z., what do? They vote too, and if 2/3 passes it, where does it go? Astrid, where does it go? Then what does the president do? Kevin, what do you do?
I might say that it could be a law or retract it or veto it.
Yep, so he gets to decide if he wants to pass it or veto it. Then what happens? What is the judicial branch? How do they come into this mess? What do they do? Elio?
We have to see if Jerry broke the rule before.
So we see if the law has passed, we have to decide first if it's what?
If it's constitutional.
We decide if the law is unconstitutional or not. If it's not unconstitutional, that means it's constitutional. It follows our laws. We pass it, we keep it, and then what do?
And then we see if Jerry broke the law before it was made or after.
Well, since he broke it after we pass it into a law, what happens to him? Where does he have to go?
He has to go to court.
He has to go to court, and he'll go to his state court, not the federal court where the Supreme Court justices are. They just decide if the law is constitutional. He'll go to a regular court where they're going to prosecute him. So guys, I want you to go ahead and go back to your seat, take your play and anything else you brought. Quickly, quickly, quickly. And since you guys are so knowledgeable now, thank you. Since you guys are so knowledgeable now about rules and laws and how the government works together to make them, we're going to write letters to our third grade friends to teach it to them because they need to learn about it too. Can I have someone? Sir Med, can you pass one of these out to every student? Quickly. These are your letters. To write your letter, you may use your notes. You can use your notes, but there are directions that Sir Med is passing out for what needs to be included in each letter. Your notes are in your brochure. There's notes in your demonstration.
Okay, and Astrid, you don't know what to do because you're not listening.
Can we like use a play?
Yeah, you can use the play.
We could say that what happened to Jerry Cat about 16 and Bradley
You can use that as an example.
had to go to the school.
Who has?
Read the directions and then do the assignment. You don't need to
Sir
tell
Med, do you
me.
need help passing that out? No. You're moving kind of slow. Thank you. So these letters have to include all of the parts of a friendly letter. Now we've been writing friendly letters to our pen pals for a long time, so we should all be experts at this. We need to have the date, our greeting, which is dear so-and-so. For dear, you can say dear third grader. You need to have the body, which is all of your information. You need to have a closing, so your friend or sincerely, and then you need to sign it. So I set it up for you. So those are all the parts it needs to have. But if we look at our prompt, it tells us what needs to be in our letter. Bianca, can you read the prompt to us?
Use your understanding and what we learned today about our three branches of government to write a letter to a third grader in our school. You will later tell him or her about the three branches of government work together to create laws that keep us safe.
So what does your letter need to be about? Robert?
About laws that keep us safe.
So I don't need to know that, the third grader doesn't need to know that the legislative branch has a House of Representatives with 435 people in it based on the size of each state. They don't need to know that. They want to know how we have laws and how they keep us safe and how each of the three branches plays a role in that. And also we need to include all of the parts of a friendly letter. And, Jerry, can you read starting from right here what our letter also needs to have? Yep.
An opening sentence, a fact about each branch, and how it helps to create laws that keep us safe, and a closing.
So you need to have an opening sentence that tells the third grader what you're going to write about. You need to have a fact about each of the three branches of government, and a closing sentence and sign it. We're going to go ahead and get started for the next 5 minutes, and whatever's not finished is going to be morning work. So go ahead and get started. Everyone should be writing. You have a lot to write.
Good afternoon. The following classes have perfect attendance. Ms. Holmes' afternoon class, Ms. Beller, Ms. Kanyas, Ms. Kabilly, Ms. Sarkey, Ms. Prather, Ms. Arnold, Ms. Pascucci, Ms. Boosterhouse, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Moore, and Mr. Hurtado.
And the president passed the law, and the judicial branch decides if the law is constitutional. And we're going to teach that to the third graders so they know about it too. So you're going to write your letter on here and make sure you have it. No, not all of that. You're just writing how each branch works together to create laws. So you only need to talk about that. You don't need to tell me all that extra information. I don't know, it's your letter. You can say, I'm here to explain to you, or you can say, ooh, I like that. Heather started hers with a question. Did you know? Oh, that's how Ellie started hers. Those are good ones. Allison is starting hers with a question. Yeah, you guys learned about a lot of great ways to lead your writing or to start off your writing, so you can use one of those. And if you're not sure what to do, your directions are right there.